Welcome to another Faith Horizons podcast. Today. I'm here with my good friend Chris Ward, and Chris Ward and I we met through a group of men that would gather together at a coffee shop, and I've just grown to know Chris Ward. And so today we decided to do an interview because Chris Ward has been writing books. Working on it. Anyway, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Nathan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so today I'm like to go into a little bit of the shortly into some of his backstory, which is also in the book, and then also just get to know more about the why of why he wrote this book, and just understanding, just what it has to offer us.
Okay, sounds good.
So I was reading through this book, just trying to do my homework, to make sure that I understood what this was all about. And it has a lot of feel like of the John Maxwell books that he writes, and he's got all these bullet points, and he's got all this stuff put together that we can somehow digest a big topic. It seems like your book's like that.
Well, that makes sense. I think fundamentally the people that we hang around with eventually rub off on us, right?
Yes.
And so John Maxwell is one of those guys that's been highly influential in my life, especially when I became part of his team back in 2016, 17.
Yeah. Oh, great. I didn't know that you were part of his team, but it's definitely reflected in the way you're presenting information so that it's digestible.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's a compliment.
Yeah. What is the name of the book?
The Path to Purpose.
The Path to Purpose.
Correct.
So there's about 11, I think there's 11 chapters in this book, just going through just different areas of life and everything. But there was something that stood out to me in this book right away, and it was this: what is true poverty? And I know that you're an experienced business professional, and you're a successful business professional, and you've been successful multiple times, and so you've gotten to the top of Success Mountain, and it seemed like at some of those times that maybe it was still lacking purpose.
Yeah, I mean that's right in the introduction. When it comes to poverty, it's interesting because the culture I feel like that I live in very much puts focus and emphasis on the external things, right?
Yes.
So driving the right car, living in the right neighborhood, the right house, the right amount of income. And yet going back to about 5 years ago in 2018, 19, I found my spot that I dreamt of being. Now, I wasn't earning millions of dollars every year. That's not the point. The point of this is that I found myself in a spot in life where I was achieving a level of success that once I dreamt about. And it's interesting, sometimes reaching a spot where it's time to go to the next level of discovering clarity about purpose and vision in life, it's not necessarily because we hit this low in life, this financial devastation or external circumstances that are not ideal. Sometimes we can find ourselves achieving the things that we've always dreamt about achieving, and yet feeling a void on the inside.
Yeah, that's totally true, and it was definitely reflected in the book. And the book is The Path to Purpose.
Right.
That's the whole objective of the book, is to redefine purpose. And clearly the Bible says, and you referenced it in the book, that without vision, my people perish.
That's right. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, digging into that a little bit deeper, because I've heard that for years. And I always thought that if you don't have a vision, then you just die. No, that's not really what that's saying. It's actually saying that where there's no vision, back to poverty. You mentioned poverty. That's right in the introduction of the book. So fundamentally, it's important to understand that we could be living in poverty, and yet all of our basic needs, like we're surviving and we're having success externally, but on the inside feeling unfulfilled and not feel like we're tapped in to a deeper meaning in life.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. Anyway, and it does make sense. There's lots of of very famous people, NBA stars or stuff like that. They'll say, when you get to the top, you still aren't fulfilled. They've multiple different rich people say that money's not everything, man.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the purpose of life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I know that there was a guy that recently had a conversation with, what's his name? The guy who runs Amazon. Who's that guy again?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. Anyway, so he just started to have a conversation with Jeff Bezos, and I heard about this. I saw it online or something. And he talked to him about how he liked his shirt. Because what do I have to offer this guy who has everything? You know, I like
Sure.
the color of your shirt. I like the way you dress or something like that.
Yeah.
And so because Jeff Bezos' mission in life is not money anymore.
Right.
Because he's already there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can't get much further past billions. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, trillions would be the next step, but what's the point? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. And, to be super clear, like, I do not want to villainize
No, absolutely not.
money, right?
No,
'Cause
absolutely not.
money is good for the good it can do, right?
No, it's
So
absolutely, it's vital.
I mean, Zig Ziglar says it ranks right up there with oxygen, right?
Right.
And yet, if we think about it this way, back to money is good for the good it can do. If we think about giving billions of dollars to somebody like Hitler, he could do a lot of harm because money can reveal and magnify what's in someone's heart. So somebody that's evil in nature could do a lot of harm to others and harm in the world. Yet if you give that same amount of money to someone like Mother Teresa, look at the good that she would do. So money's more of a reflection out of the heart. And yet I believe that money can reveal who someone is in their core. Right?
Wow.
We can pay attention.
That's a really good point because, if you give a person money, then it really reveals the purposes that drive them.
Right, yeah. And we could look at like Hollywood, for example, people that are the best of the best, therefore earning revenue that would show that they're really good actors and actresses and complete pros in their field. And yet I don't think there's a direct connection to money and happiness. Just because somebody is loaded doesn't necessarily mean that they feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so whether somebody has a little bit or a lot of it, I believe that it's important to have clarity for vision in our life and have a sense of purpose. Because purpose really answers the question, why do I exist?
Yeah.
Right? We just entered 2024, a new year.
Yeah.
And yet some people didn't make it into a new year. And some people that did make it into a new year are not going to make it past this month. So it's a deeper sense of fulfillment versus success, because we could be achieving great things and yet feel completely disconnected and dissatisfied on the inside.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's true poverty.
Right. Yeah.
True poverty is having everything but having nothing.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, to quote Jesus, he said, you could have the whole world, but if you don't have this, you have nothing. I think he was talking about love. You could have all of these things, but if you don't have love, you have nothing.
I kept that on the back of my business card for years.
You did?
What does it gain a man to profit the world and yet lose his soul?
Yeah, and lose exactly. That's what I'm kind of putting a couple things together there, but that's exactly right.
And it's worth asking, like, what am I chasing?
Yeah, what am I chasing?
What am I pursuing?
What am I pursuing?
My coach yesterday sent out a message via email.
Yeah,
and he said, "Is what you're pursuing what you're chasing worth pursuing?"
Yeah,
something like that. And I thought, wow, what a great question.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's a story in this book. I gotta out Chris here. Anyway, there's a story in this book. Started way back in I don't even remember the date. But anyway, in Grandview Sunfresh.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Grandview Sunfresh grocery store where you had your goals set and you were in pursuit. Anyway, tell us a little bit about this story.
That's right. Yeah. So the backstory is that my grandparents, at this time, I would have been a junior, senior in high school.
Yeah.
And my grandparents actually raised my brother and I the last few years of high school. So I was living with my grandparents, and my grandpa is a phenomenal guy, and he's old school. He has one rule, that if you're going to have a car, you have to have a job because you're going to need to pay for gas and insurance. Pretty fair.
Yeah, fair.
And so I had a job at the time because I had a car and liked to drive. It had 89 Cutlass Supreme, big 15-inch speakers in the back, and yet I was working at Hobby Lobby, and I got fired from my job.
What?
Yeah. And so my grandpa, I thought, okay, cool. I'm going to go hang out with my buddy Josh all weekend. And because this was on a Friday, the guy at Hobby Lobby basically said, Chris, you're fired. And I said, okay, cool. I went and I hung out with my buddy all weekend. And then Sunday rolled around. I thought, oh, my grandpa is not going to be happy with me once he finds out I don't have a job anymore. So my brother at the time, my younger brother Josh, was working at Sunfresh grocery store in Grandview. And I said, hey, bro, are you guys hiring? And he goes, yeah, we're always looking for
Yeah,
sackers.
we're always looking for somebody.
And I said, okay, perfect. I'll go and apply for Sunfresh to work at Sunfresh. Yeah.
And you were 18 at the time, I think, right?
That's right. 17 turned 18, something like that.
So.
Yeah, senior in high school, getting ready to graduate that year. And so therefore, I went and applied at Sunfresh, and sure enough, they hired me as a sacker of groceries.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you were sacking groceries and something else caught your eye.
That's right. Yeah, it was one of those days it was unusually slow, and so I was at the end of the aisle, and if you're in the grocery business, you may know this, it's called facing. It's where you the slow store, and so you go down the aisle and you pull products from the back of the shelf to the front so it looks more clean and presentable. And so that's what I was doing. And it was one of those moments like we see in TV, and even in my mind I captured it like an image where I was facing this direction and I looked this way and I saw who's my wife now, Ashley, for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And I remember there was just something about her that intrigued me. I mean, I'm a teenage boy, so I'm noticing
You're 18,
the opposite sex, right? It's pretty natural. And yet there was just something about her from a distance that captivated me. You know, and her hair was in a messy bun. I think she was wearing a white shirt, kind of partially tucked in, and some black pants. And I just thought to myself, I need to get to know her.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, and so she kind of held you off for a little bit but then, you were able to,
Yeah, she wanted nothing to do with me, man.
Nothing
she
to
didn't
do
like
with
anything
you.
she didn't like how I looked. She thought I looked dorky. She didn't like my haircut. She didn't want anything to do with me, and yet I was on a mission.
Yeah, you have everything about you is wrong, and you were but you were on a mission. Anyway, so yeah, in the book, there's also a reference to how they were calling you on the PA and telling you to move over one because you were completely inebriated by her, so that you were always hanging around her. You were sacking only in her spot.
That's exactly right.
So that you could, because she was a cashier, you were sacking, and you wanted to only be with her rather than moving to other locations that you were needed at.
That's exactly right. That spot where I saw her for the first time is also the spot.
Yeah.
The reason she was there is because it's where they would go and check in. The upper management was there.
Oh, gee.
And they had like that two-way glass that you can't see through, but we knew that they could be watching us, right?
Oh, my gosh.
And so that's where she was standing the first time I saw her. So the upper management was in that area behind the two-way glass. And so they could clearly look and see what was going on and see I was standing there engaging, talking to her. Meanwhile, the cashier right next to me was sacking the groceries because I was so focused on Ashley, I wouldn't go sack anybody's groceries.
Had a goal.
That's right. Yeah, I had my eye on the prize. Well, and the part of, I think that what for me is sometimes challenging, just being real honest with myself, is asking myself, what is it I really desire?
Yeah.
What is it I want? I've been digging into Nehemiah.
Oh, wow.
And I've been thinking about this. What would have happened because Nehemiah was cupbearer to the king.
Yes, he was.
And basically the context is Nehemiah's buddies came to him and told him about the destruction in his city where his ancestors were from. And it says that Nehemiah wept. And then Nehemiah had an opportunity after weeping for numerous days to go before the king. And the king noticed that Nehemiah looked off. He goes, "Why do you look so sad when I know you're not sick?" And he said, he shared with them about the destruction. And the king said, "Well, what do you want?"
Yeah.
And Nehemiah answered, "I want to go back and I want to rebuild the stone walls and rebuild the wooden gates."
Yeah.
And I think to myself, what would have happened if Nehemiah would have said, "I don't know. Let me think about it." Because what was interesting about that, not only did the king say, yes, go and do that, because he did have a job in the palace for the king.
Yeah.
The king actually went on to fund the entire mission, all the people help, all the finances and resources.
Yeah, the resources.
But what if Nehemiah was unclear about what he wanted? He could have missed that opportunity.
So you had clarity.
I said all that to say that, Nathan, that I had clarity at that time what I desired. Yeah.
And so the upper management would say, "Hey, Crash, you got to move over."
They could see what was going on behind the window. And so they would page over the intercom. That's the old school phone right there. They would page over the intercom. Yeah. "Chris, move over to cash register 3," and it would be the one right next to me. And then it got even more ridiculous than that, where I started syncing up my breaks with hers, making sure that I would go on break the same time, so we would end up in the little break room.
Right.
And I would just invite myself across the table from her and just sit down and talk to her.
Yeah.
And they would page us. "Chris and Ashley to the front, please. Chris and Ashley to the front," because I'm a talker, right?
Yeah.
And she's more quiet and reserved, and yet we started to extend our break times together.
Oh, gee. Chris and Ashley to the front.
Yeah, Chris and Ashley to the front.
All right, man. That's awesome. So anyway, so this book is just talking about, having a life's purpose and a vision. And, this is, one of the examples that you made in the book, that you had a vision, you had a purpose, and right. You stuck to it, and other people saw that. Sometimes you got in trouble for it, whatever. That's right. Always true of our visions. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you got in trouble because I'm in pursuit of what I want, and there's sometimes the people that are, commenting on our pursuit are correct, and sometimes they're just, lost their minds, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they're the wrong company to hang around with. You mentioned that in the book, is that, this book kind of takes you through a step-by-step, process of just different things, that you're going to go through and encounter.
That's right. Yeah. The goal is, I didn't want to write a book just for information.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be more of something that somebody could pick up and learn from and take actionable steps from. And so actually
absolutely.
One of the things I've been working on afterwards, because I'm a reader, and so sometimes I'll read a book that's really impactful and on time for my life, but then my temptation is to just push it away once I get to the last chapter and be done with it and just move on to next. And so one of the things I've actually been working on behind the scenes, what I mean by that is after the book of Path to Purpose, I'm thinking, if there's somebody out there like me where they read something that actually is impactful, I want to be able to put something in their hands that they could stick with for months. And so I'm working on another book that's daily steps to pursue purpose in life, where it gives I write a statement, a thought-provoking statement, then there's a thought-provoking question. And then kind of like the book Love Dare, where it gives you a take action. I call it daily challenge, where you go and do the thing. That way, if somebody is really in a season of life where they're pursuing next level of clarity and vision, because sometimes we could have clarity, we could have a sense of purpose and vision in our life, and yet we could get to a new season of life where that no longer is going to compel us forward.
Yeah.
And I like to refer to it as I need a deeper level of vision and a deeper sense or deeper level of purpose as well. And so if there's somebody that's out there that it's not just a book that you read through and then you're done, that they want to, like, what if somebody spends the rest of the year pursuing purpose and vision for their life? I wanted to put something in their hands that they could use to walk that journey out.
That's great. I remember reading your book, that there was a reference to a time in your life where you came to you were the CEO, I think, of a company. And that kind of really goes into this thing of like, hey, you might be at the top of your thing, but
right.
you need to maybe evaluate where you're at,
That's right.
And so you in the book, you referenced how you went into I think that you said the garage.
I just saw that notepad this morning. It's still there.
And you got out a notepad, just began writing. I think this was in 2019. So this was
exactly
about
right.
5 years ago-ish. Anyway, so you wrote down all this stuff, and you decided to change the direction that you were on.
That's right.
Change. I think it's in the change chapter, how you have to sometimes pivot or change the direction that you're on.
Yeah, sometimes we need to course correct. And so I reached a spot in my life where I was overseeing a real estate office of about 110, 120 real estate agents.
Very successful.
Yeah, I had a real estate team.
Yeah.
So I've always dreamt of overseeing a real estate office. I've always dreamt of having a real estate team, and then I had an interest in coaching, just because I could look at my life, and I share the stories. Like if you pick up on the patterns, like I had a health coach. He's still my guy when it comes to health and nutrition, Zane.
Yeah.
Right. And then I have Doug, who's my triathlete coach.
Yeah.
And then my first business coach, Rick DeLuca, I mentioned him in the book as well. I mentioned all those guys because they've been influential
in your life.
In my life, absolutely. And so when it comes to that moment in the garage, I bought one of those ridiculously overpriced notepads. They're like $30-$40, the ones that you can hang on the wall and pull off. And I just fast forwarded all the way to the end of my life, because I think sometimes in order to get clarity about what I really desire, like I need to go all the way to the end of my life and think about what is the impact that I want to have in the world.
Yeah.
What is the impact I want to have in my household, and then out from there.
Yeah.
And I broke it down into different sections, right? When it comes to finishing my life at a spiritually all-time high, what does that look like? How would I know if I'm there and achieve that?
Yeah.
And then I went on to, okay, what about when it comes to my physical health? Because I mean, at that time, Nathan, I was weighing 246 and at 5'6.5". I'm vertically challenged. Is what I told my son yesterday. He's like, "What does that mean, Dad?" I'm like, "Basically, I'm short, 5'6.5".
Challenge.
And yet weighing 246, that was not a win. I was coming home exhausted.
Yeah.
And when I thought about who I desire to be in the future, I didn't see myself being, 80, 90, 110, however end up being. Like, I desired, because there's a direct connection. I believe we live life from the inside out, meaning what's on the inside always shows up on the outside.
Yeah.
And at this time, sure, I was overseeing an office, had a real estate team, pursuing business coaching.
You made it.
And yet the truth is, Nathan, I would come home exhausted at the end of the day, and I didn't want to play with my son Matthew or my girls. I just wanted to crash on the couch.
Right.
Because I was physically exhausted. I was bringing home to my family the leftovers.
Yeah.
When I think about the end of my life and the story that it tells, there was a clear disconnect there.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes, because it's easy, if you're like me at all, it's easy just to focus on the here and the now, to think about what else do I need to get through today? How do I pay my bills and get by another week, another month? And sometimes we need to go a little bit higher. My buddy Abe Shreve puts it this way: we need to think bigger and go up to a 30,000-foot perspective.
Yeah.
Meaning a bigger picture in life, rising above the current circumstances. And
Wow.
that's what happened that day on that notepad. I went through the spiritual side of my life, the physical side of my life, key relationships.
Yeah.
Right. So what does it look like to have a thriving marriage?
Yeah.
Being 80, 90 years old.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it in detail, because those are things that I found myself not thinking about, and yet going there, things became clear to me on what was the next step for me to take.
And so you ended up actually resigning from the position of CEO, I think.
That's correct.
Right? That's a significant decision. Yeah.
It was a really big decision.
Yeah.
I mean, it impacted many people's lives. It impacted my business partner, our relationship. It was a very big decision. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, but that was because you looked at the end, saw where you were at. You said,
Right.
You know what? Where I'm at is not going to help me get to here.
Correct. Yeah. Well, we could have the right thing at the wrong time.
Exactly.
So sometimes it's a timing thing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of there was a few different lessons. I like to journal.
Yeah.
And I have these stacks of journals now over the years, which is neat looking back. And so I like to journal the lessons, because something I learned from another coach in my life, Diana Kokoska, she mentioned that until we identify the lesson, God is so patient with us. He'll keep giving us an opportunity to learn that lesson until we move on. That's my words for what I learned from Diana. And yet the same was true for me. So I identified a handful of lessons. And one of the things I learned, I just mentioned it, that the right thing at the wrong time may not be a blessing.
And I noticed that in your book also, at the end of the chapter, you have of these suggestions of action steps, and part of that is journaling.
Right.
Yeah. And so you're encouraging journaling in the action steps of these of the book.
That's correct. That's actually in the final revision that I just finished this week. That's one of the changes. Why I was asking you, was it this version or that version, is because they were specific questions in version 1 and 2 of the book. And the final version, I actually changed the questions at the end of each chapter.
Yeah.
I changed them to more open questions, such as it's the same thing after each chapter. What stood out to you in this chapter?
Wow.
And what's something that if you did consistently would positively impact your life?
Yeah.
Because there's so much information out there, but nothing changes until something changes.
Inside of you.
Right.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So when it comes to making a change, the goal would be is to read the chapter and not just move on, but to pause and reflect and then do something differently.
Yeah, I felt like, we always, with John Maxwell's books, we always blow through them, oh my gosh, I got some great stuff out of that.
Yeah. It's easy just to do that and just move on. But it's application piece.
If you did just one of those things well, you would change your life.
Possibly. That's correct.
I'm just saying, one of those well. One of the things in one of those, in your book, or one of I'm referencing the Maxwell book because it's similar, very similar.
Yeah.
If you just did one of these things well, it would change your life.
That's a valid point.
And so if you just like you're saying, don't just breeze through it, then move on, because that's not going to help you.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. There's action steps here. If you don't, it's like the Bible. If you read the Bible but don't do it, you don't. There's no. It does. It makes sense, but it doesn't. It's not applicable.
That's right. Taking action is the difference maker.
Yeah.
Right. And, if it's just about the information, that could be like entertainment. I'm not as funny as I think I am.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not in the entertainment business, right? I love seeing people. I identified my core value, because something I got real clear on is my mission and vision in life, and then my core value. And I've identified my core value as growth.
Yeah.
Growth. And that's that progress, continually move forward.
Learning.
That's right. And part of where the magic happens, I've learned from others, is because success leaves clues. People have gone before us. I don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And where the magic happens is where we take different action. And so whether it's church on Sunday, or you've seen this where I show up with my journal, I'm learning based, right?
Yeah.
Not learning for the sake of just knowing more to know more information, but learning for the sake of doing, taking action. So whether it's you and I or our buddies having coffee on every other Friday, like last Friday, or in a big conference, whatever city, I always make it a point to, in my journal, if we flip through them, you'd see that I circle things or I put a star to them. I'm going to narrow it down to the handful of things that if I take action on, I believe it'll move me forward. Yeah. And so the goal would be in the book is that in each chapter, or maybe just one thing for the whole book, that there's something somebody could put a star or highlight or circle or whatever, and then they go and take action day after day, because it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. Right? So just that one small next step to continue to move forward towards purpose.
That's so good too. And you and I had talked about this, so I think the chapter 11 is coachable. You have to be coachable. Be coachable. And this book, is very coach friendly. Mm-hmm. It's very coach friendly. And we had talked about, the possibility of possibly creating groups of people that get together and do this together, because this book kind of needs a little bit of accountability. It'd be nice if it had some accountability, because it really is challenging. Mm-hmm. to the person, like, hey, are you going to change your life? And so you're providing good direction points for people to head towards.
I appreciate
that. And then, the question is, are you going to do what it takes to get there?
Yeah. And there's a difference between wouldn't it be nice if versus I'm committed and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Like you and your, I've made it a point, and me. So if you tell me something, I'm going to check in. You've been getting after, you bought an indoor.
I bought an indoor bike, an IC4. I think it's a Schwinn bike anyway.
And so probably until forever, I'll just say, hey, Nathan, how's it going on the bike? And like today you said, yep, I got after it. It's amazing how just having somebody that could possibly check in with us can make a difference. And I think that's the thing. My book is lengthy, like it's over 300 pages. Yeah. And I thought about, okay, is there a chapter I could just leave out? I actually did leave out a chapter because I already talked about the one particular topic about SMART goals throughout the book. So I didn't need a whole chapter about it.
Right.
And yet I chose to leave in, I am coachable. And being coachable is actually having an attitude of realizing I don't know it all. Yeah. I know what I know and believing there's more to know.
Yeah, and you actually play this out in your life because like you said, you got a health coach, you got a business coach, so I
need help, man.
I need help, man.
TD Jakes, I've heard him say this numerous times. He says that if you see a turtle on a fence post, he didn't get there by himself. And so I think that if I'm trying to figure out everything on my own and not learn from others, I'm making life harder than it needs to be. Yeah. Because others, I could learn from my own mistakes, and yet that comes at a cost. It's more wise to learn from others and their mistakes at their expense. So the more that I could learn from others, there we go. I used to say,
makes a lot of sense.
I don't believe this anymore. But I used to say, I learned things the hard way. Well, that's just a choice. That's not very wise. Why would I choose to learn things the hard way? Yeah. I want to learn from others. So
somebody else already did that. Let me learn from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
The round wheel works better than the square wheel.
There we go.
Let's not go back to the square wheel and realize, that's why.
Fair enough.
Anyway, just kind of concluding here, I know that there's a website for this book. Where can this website be found?
Yeah, it's path2purpose.co. path2purposebook.co.
path2purposebook.co.
Correct.
That'll be in the show notes for anybody that wants to just click on it. That makes it easier. And then you are I know the book's not out yet. So when is the actual, like, I know there's a sign, like at the Path to Purpose thing, there's a sign up thing that people can pre-register for.
That's
right?
correct. Yep.
Right. And then you're just asking for their email so that you can get them pre-registered.
That's
that
correct.
correct?
Their name and email. And
Okay.
what that does is it puts them in line for the pre-order.
Okay.
And the book's going to be released to answer that question. It's going to be March.
Okay. March 5th. I
Yes.
knew it was coming
And,
up.
So one of the benefits of getting in line for the pre-order, because we'll notify you on March 5th when the book's released.
Yeah.
We'll send you the Amazon link. And there's a Kindle version. That one you could actually pre-order. But if you want the hardback or paperback, that's the March 5th opportunity where it'll be released. One of the benefits of pre-registering is that you'll receive an invite to my closed community on Facebook, a closed community group. And so if you're looking to stay connected and get to know me more, that's where you get the inside scoop.
Oh, that's
where
great.
actually one of the videos I'm going to be releasing is I'm going to actually show that notepad in my garage.
Oh, geez.
Because it's been hanging over this wood part of my garage.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to show that.
Yeah.
So you'll get some behind the scenes bits of information like that.
So people can kind of get to know you more.
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff
right.
Like that.
It's fun and share some stories.
Yeah, well, man, I know I've gotten to, you've definitely challenged me, just through knowing you and just to, be, you and I are the same age. So, I'm like, okay, maybe I can do something differently, not, that I'm on the wrong path, but I'm just
Sure.
like, you learn from each other,
It's amazing how that works. So I'm curious. I know this is your podcast and you answer the questions, and yet,
Yeah, you can ask whatever.
We've been friends for
Yeah.
a few years now. Looking back at our friendship, what's the one thing that you've learned as a result of our friendship?
Well, I like how you're goal driven. You're a very goal driven person, and so it seems like you try to stay focused on that. And then, if anything like kind of steers you off of that, then you kind of steer back towards the goal. That's one thing that I've noticed about you. You're very goal driven.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I appreciate about you, and you went there earlier mentioning the groups, and you're very visionary, meaning that to me, it seems like you're a visionary. You're a big picture thinker, where you look at what's going on now and you connect it to what could be possible. And usually it inspires me to think bigger. Like when you're talking about the groups or small groups, like, man, that's, so just know that it's not a one-sided, it's iron sharpening iron is really what it is. I believe we're both better as a result of our friendship.
Yeah. And I could see, I know that you've already done some business coaching. Have you ever done business coaching?
I have, actually.
Okay, I know you've probably done some business coaching. It seems
I actively do that right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, even in just working in a real estate office, or you're in business coaching of some sort, because you have to coach your agents, you have to coach other people, along.
That's right. Yeah.
And I could just see the coaching aspect of what you're doing just become greater and greater.
I saw on Facebook, someone I know, her name's Shayla, she mentioned on Facebook a provoking question, like, what is it that you do, or what is it you're good at? A question like that. And I thought about that this morning, and I put two things. Number one, helping people gain clarity about what they really desire.
Yeah.
And number two, I help them get that. And so it shows up in real estate sales, right? Helping people know what they want.
It's transferable. That's transferable. Right,
yeah. Yep. But as far as who I am in my core, what I love about business opportunity, the purpose, I've heard it put this way, and so I'll repeat it to prove the point, that the purpose of business is to fund our perfect life. Yeah. If I was going to restate that a different way, I would say the purpose of business, it could fund our purpose. Yeah. And so for me, it's exciting when I meet with a business owner, no matter what business they own, I listen to them. I help them if they need clarity about what it is they desire. We have those conversations, and then I help them set goals, help them create a roadmap, because that's really what goals are.
You talked about that right away in the book. Yeah.
Well, it's important because we could be dreamers, we could be visionary, we could have this image of what life could look like, and yet we're disconnected if we don't have action steps that we could take to move towards that, right? Yeah. So we need a plan.
Absolutely.
We need goals.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Should have it out soon. Anyway, God bless.
Thank you, Nathan.